You do not quit because the dream is too big. You quit because your emotions keep voting louder than your future. That is the part nobody warns you about. The hardest battle is not against the goal. It is against the version of you that wants comfort right now. You call it losing motivation. But that is not the full story. Motivation was never built to carry your whole life. It can start the engine. It cannot steer the car through every storm. And when you expect a feeling to do the work of a system, you collapse early. That is why you keep leaving in the middle. You begin with emotion, but you never prepare for resistance. So the first obstacle feels bigger than it really is. A slow week starts looking like failure instead of process. One bad day starts sounding like proof that you are not built for this. That is how small friction becomes a final decision. Here is the truth. Most people do not give up because they are weak. They give up because they misread the meaning of discomfort. They think struggle means stop, when struggle often means you have finally entered the real work. At the beginning, everything feels clean because nothing has tested you yet. The goal looks exciting when it still lives in your imagination. Your habits look easy before life punches holes in your schedule. Your confidence sounds powerful before results start arriving slower than expected. But here's what winners do differently. They expect the emotional crash that follows a new commitment. They know excitement expires fast, so they build for the day after inspiration leaves. That one shift changes everything. Because the moment you stop treating difficulty like a red light, you stop quitting at every turn. Think about how people usually begin. They set a goal after a painful moment, an inspiring video, or a burst of frustration. They decide this time will be different. They promise discipline, consistency, and total focus. For a few days, that promise feels real. They wake up earlier. They work harder. They talk like a new person. Then normal life returns. The inbox fills up. The alarm feels heavier. Progress becomes invisible. And suddenly the same person who felt unstoppable starts negotiating with their own standards. One skip day becomes two. Two becomes a story. The story becomes identity. Now they are no longer saying, I miss my routine. Now they are saying, maybe I am just not that disciplined. That is where the damage happens. Not in the missed action itself, but in the meaning you attach to it. Because once you turn a temporary slip into a permanent label, quitting feels logical. You stop because you think the evidence is final. But it was never final. It was just a moment. So here is the deeper mechanism. You give up too soon because you are emotionally measuring a process that can only be judged long-term. That means you keep asking short-term feelings to explain long-term outcomes. And feelings are terrible statisticians. They exaggerate the present. They ignore the invisible progress. They worship comfort. They panic when reward is delayed. That is why a week of effort can feel pointless, even when it is laying foundation. That is why a month of slow progress can feel like a waste, even when it is rewiring you. That is why so many people leave right before the pattern starts paying them back. They expect clarity before commitment has matured. But clarity often comes after repetition, not before it. Confidence works the same way. Most people think confidence comes first, then action follows. In reality, repeated action is usually what manufactures believable confidence. You trust yourself after you watch yourself continue. Not after you make a dramatic promise. Not after you buy a notebook. Not after you announce your comeback. You trust yourself when you prove, in private, that your mood does not control your movement. That is why quitting too soon is rarely about the goal itself. It is about your relationship with discomfort, delay, and identity. You want the result, but you have not yet made peace with the road. And the road has no interest in your speeches. It only responds to repetition. A person starts the gym and expects visible change in 2 weeks. The body changes slower than their expectations, so they decide it is not working. A creator posts 10 videos and expects momentum immediately. The audience grows slowly, so they assume they are untalented. A business owner hears no for a month and thinks the idea is dead. But the body was adapting. The creator was improving. The business owner was learning what the market rejects before finding what it rewards. The process was not betraying them. Their expectations were. This is why emotional impatience destroys more dreams than lack of ability. Talent matters, yes. Resources matter, yes. But millions of capable people still lose to a simpler problem. They leave the field before compounding can introduce itself. And compounding is shy in the beginning. It does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives looking small, repetitive, and almost insulting. One workout. One page. One call. One difficult conversation. One morning where you show up without applause. That is how real change enters your life. Quietly. Without asking for attention. But because it looks ordinary, people underestimate it. They keep waiting for transformation to feel cinematic. They want a breakthrough mood. A breakthrough sign. A breakthrough week. But most breakthroughs are only obvious in reverse. While you're inside them, they look like boring consistency. That is why winners seem different from the outside. People think winners have stronger motivation or less fear. Usually, they just have a better contract with reality. They do not expect the journey to flatter them every day. They do not expect momentum to feel smooth. They do not expect progress to happen on a schedule that protects their ego. They accept that some days will feel empty. They accept that some effort will feel thankless. They accept that improvement often hides before it reveals. That acceptance keeps them in the game long enough to become dangerous. So here's the shift. Stop asking, how do I stay motivated forever? Start asking, how do I keep moving when motivation disappears? That is the adult question. That is the winner's question. Because the person who needs perfect emotion to perform will always be fragile. Life will eventually hand them stress, boredom, rejection, fatigue, confusion, and doubt. And if every one of those feelings has veto power, their future stays weak. You do not need to become emotionless. You need to become less obedient to temporary emotion. There is a difference. You can feel discouraged and still execute. You can feel uncertain and still prepare. You can feel tired and still protect one important promise. That is how self-respect grows. Not from winning every day, but from refusing to disappear every time the day feels heavy. So what do you do instead? First, shrink the battlefield when your mind gets dramatic. When people feel overwhelmed, they start thinking in lifetime terms. They say, I cannot do this for a year. I cannot stay this disciplined forever. That thought alone makes quitting feel reasonable. But you are not being asked to win the year tonight. You are being asked to complete the next honest action. That might be 10 focused minutes. That might be 1 page of writing. That might be 1 workout set. That might be sending the difficult email you have delayed all week. Winners know how to reduce pressure without reducing standards. They bring the mission down to the next executable step. That interrupts panic. And panic is often the real trigger behind premature quitting. Second, separate performance from identity. A bad day does not make you lazy. A slow month does not make you incapable. A failed attempt does not make you a fraud. It makes you a human being in process. When you confuse a result with an identity, you create emotional prison. Then every setback feels personal. Then every delay feels humiliating. Then quitting feels like escape. But when you learn to say, that result was weak, but I am still building, you stay flexible. And flexibility keeps people alive long enough to improve. Third, build proof, not promises. Most people are addicted to the feeling of a fresh start. They love declarations. They love plans. They love telling themselves this chapter is different. But the brain is not convinced by speeches. It is convinced by evidence. So stop trying to inspire yourself with fantasy. Start collecting receipts. A week of consistency is a receipt. Finishing what you said you would finish is a receipt. Returning after a bad day is a receipt. Those receipts change your self-image more than any affirmation ever will, because now your confidence has something solid under it. Fourth, expect the dip. Every meaningful pursuit has a phase where effort stays high and emotional reward stays low. That phase breaks almost everyone. Not because it is impossible, but because it feels thankless. This is where people say, maybe this just is not for me. No. Maybe you are just standing in the most predictable valley of the process. If you expect the dip, you stop being shocked by it. And when you stop being shocked, you stop making permanent decisions inside temporary frustration. Fifth, protect continuity more than intensity. People often think the best plan is the hardest plan. It is not. The best plan is the one you can return to consistently under real conditions. That means your system must survive busy days, low-energy days, and emotionally messy days. If your routine only works when life is perfect, it is not a routine. It is a fantasy. Winners build patterns that bend without breaking. That is why they last. They know missing one day is noise. Quitting the pattern is the danger. So when life punches the schedule, they adjust fast and continue. No drama. No identity crisis. Just return. That word matters more than most people realize. Return after distraction. Return after embarrassment. Return after disappointment. Return after proving to yourself that you still have more ego than endurance. Return anyway. Because your future is not built by never falling out of rhythm. It is built by shortening the distance between falling out and getting back in. That is one of the cleanest definitions of discipline. Not perfection. Recovery speed. Here is what winners understand at a deeper level. Every time you continue while uncomfortable, you are training more than a habit. You are training your nervous system to stop treating effort like threat. You are teaching your mind that resistance is survivable. You are proving that boredom does not have authority over your mission. You are becoming the kind of person who can hold a direction longer than a feeling. And that trait changes everything. Because once you can stay with hard things past the emotional drop, your options expand. Now you can learn skills most people abandon. Now you can build relationships with patience. Now you can create a business with enough stamina to outlast early silence. Now you can transform your body without demanding instant proof. Now you can lead yourself. And if you cannot lead yourself, nothing external will save you for long. More money will not fix it. More praise will not fix it. A better plan will not fix it. Because you will sabotage every opportunity with the same reflex. Discomfort appears. Meaning gets distorted. You leave too early. That cycle must end. Not with a big speech. With a new standard. The standard is simple. You do not get to judge the path while you are still emotionally reacting to the middle. You do not get to call the mission impossible because this week felt hard. You do not get to label yourself incapable because progress arrives slower than your ego wanted. You stay. You learn. You adjust. You continue. That is how mature ambition sounds. Not loud. Not theatrical. Not obsessed with looking inspired. Just committed. That commitment is what separates people who flirt with potential from people who actually become dangerous with it. So, if you've been thinking about quitting, pause before you turn a difficult chapter into a final verdict. Maybe the problem is not that you picked the wrong goal. Maybe the problem is that you expected the right goal to feel easy. Maybe you thought uncertainty meant misalignment. Maybe you thought slow progress meant no progress. Maybe you thought discipline should feel exciting after the first week. It does not. Sometimes discipline feels repetitive. Sometimes it feels invisible. Sometimes it feels deeply ordinary. But ordinary done long enough becomes extraordinary. That is the part people want to skip. They want the extraordinary identity without the ordinary repetitions that create it. But here's what winners do differently. They respect the boring parts. They understand that greatness is usually built in rooms with no audience. They know the silent reps are not punishment. They are the price of credibility. So the next time you feel the urge to give up, do not ask whether the path feels good today. Ask whether quitting now would be wisdom or just emotional relief wearing a smart outfit. That question will expose a lot. Because sometimes quitting is necessary. But most of the time, people are not quitting from clarity. They are quitting from fatigue, impatience, bruised ego, or fear of slow progress. And none of those should be in charge of your future. You do not need a perfect month. You need a stronger response. You do not need endless motivation. You need fewer negotiations with temporary emotion. You do not need to feel unstoppable. You need to become reliable. Reliable people win a lot of games that dramatic people never finish. So breathe. Simplify the next move. Drop the theater. Protect the promise. Then show up again tomorrow. And the day after that. And the day after that. Because the real reason you give up too soon is not that you lack potential. It is that you have been letting short-term feelings make long-term decisions. End that pattern, and you stop living like a spectator to your own ambition. You become someone your future can finally trust. And once that happens, the game changes.